First up, for announcements, there will be no meeting tomorrow. Tomorrow's meeting will be canceled. Just to let you know, tomorrow's meeting will be canceled. The updated posting should be out soon. First up we have is bill introductions. Do we have any bill introductions from the committee or from the audience? Seeing no bill introductions, we'll open our first hearing of the session on Senate Bill 142. Adam, can you give us a briefing?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 142 would create a new provision that would require a move-over law for all vehicles. It would require that in the event of a motor vehicle is stopped with hazard warning lights, road flares, or caution signals, that the driver of an approaching motor vehicle would either have to change lanes, if possible, or proceed in the same lane with due caution and reduce speed to maintain a safe speed. Violations would be a traffic violation and could be subject to a fine of $75. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Committee questions? Seeing none, thank you, Adam. First up we have for proponents is Travis Lowe. Welcome to Transportation Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to be here this morning. I am Travis Lowe from the Braden Heidner Loan Associates firm, here today representing AAA Kansas. AAA Kansas proudly serves over 350,000 Kansans across the state. On behalf of AAA, we'd like to thank you for the opportunity to offer support for legislation that we believe will improve road safety for our drivers and innocent bystanders on the roads as well. Senate Bill 142, the bill before us this morning, is a two-pronged approach to protect drivers who are stranded on the side of the highway in a disabled vehicle, as well as other drivers on the road. By the term disabled vehicles, which is detailed at on the top of page 1 of the bill, we are referring to vehicles that are on the side of the highway that are displaying hazard warning signs, road flares, cones, some show distress, that are unexpectedly stopped on the side of the highway. Now, Senate Bill 142 works in two different scenarios. The bill says that if a driver is driving on a highway and approaches a disabled vehicle on the side of the road, then they should proceed with caution as they pass that vehicle. Now, we want to note proceeding with caution means being aware and slowing down as you pass by. It does not mandate a certain degree of speed reduction as you cross the vehicle. Some states do have that approach. We're just talking about slowing down, making sure you're aware, i.e. not whizzing by 75 miles an hour mere inches away from a parked vehicle and someone changing a flat tire. The second scenario is if you're driving on a multi-lane highway, like an interstate highway, the best practice would be to move over to the opposite lane, but in a circumstance where you can't do that, again, just slow down as you proceed, just like in the previous scenario we described. We do know it's very common to see disabled vehicles on the side of the highway. The drivers and the occupants may be out of their vehicles, changing a tire, getting something out of the trunk, the hood's propped open, possibly waiting for a tow truck. Whatever the case, as we mentioned, these are vehicles who have unexpectedly stopped on the side of the highway and they're waiting for help. Now, this may sound like common sense, and we're pleased to say that a lot of the stakeholder conversations we've had with legislators have actually thought that was the law, but we regret to say that disabled vehicles are not part of the Kansas move-over statutes as it currently stands, and we have seen those consequences. The Kansas Department of Transportation will tell us that in a recent 4-year statistic window from 2018 to 2022 has resulted in 13 fatalities on our Kansas roads because of these types of circumstances, and almost 200 crashes a year, again, in these types of circumstances. Now, Kansas does already have a, quote, slow down and move over law, as we mentioned in our statute, that applies to emergency vehicles, tow trucks, utilities vehicles, road maintenance vehicles, but not for disabled vehicles. And we do want to make clear this does not apply to a vehicle that's been left unattended on the side of the road, maybe a little further off the side. It's been there for days. You might see that orange law enforcement sticker tape on the vehicle to show that it's been marked. That actually would not apply to this type of circumstance. There is a fine applied for violation of this bill. It'd be set at $75, which is noted on page 7 of the bill. And there is a fiscal note that I believe has been prepared that accompanies this bill on the legislature's website, showing there is no fiscal impact of this bill to the agency or the state general fund. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to stop for questions at the appropriate time.
Committee questions. Senator Dietrich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and maybe this is a reviser question. Is this a moving violation? I haven't had a chance to read the bill.
Our moving violations are set by regs, so at this point it would not be, because the Division of Vehicles actually is the one that establishes moving violations. So it would not be a moving violation as it would be as it's introduced.
But, Mr. Chairman, if I might, are you saying because it's in a regulation, it wouldn't be a moving violation at this point in time as introduced, but it could at some point in time? That was just my...
Conceptually, yes. In reality, they haven't amended that reg in years, so I can't anticipate that it would be.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome back to the committee.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you. My name is Joel Skelly. I'm the Director of Policy for the Kansas Department of Transportation, and I'm here today to provide proponent testimony on Senate Bill 142 on behalf of the agency. As Mr. Lowe mentioned earlier here today, this bill ultimately does prevent or help prevent, hopefully, people from striking stationary vehicles. I'm going to step back a minute so that there's not quite the feedback. A stationary vehicle is on the side of the road that has its hazards lights on, could be someone that, as Mr. Lowe indicated, where someone is actually disabled, trying to change their tire, could be outside raising the hood. KDOT does strive to improve the safety for the traveling public on reducing the number of motor vehicle fatalities and injuries and crashes. As this bill is worded, that would further enhance those laws. As Mr. Lowe also mentioned, there were almost 700 crashes in the last 4 years, 13 fatalities. Those are 13 people who didn't make it home to their families. Those are 13 people that we would love to see making it home to their families in the future. The last thing I want to mention to you, and I'm happy to stand for questions, is really education is an important part of this law, as well as any safety law, as it's an important aspect for the compliance. KDOT does stand ready and on new laws, new law enforcement issues that come up for safety initiatives with campaign messaging to inform the public of those new changes, to help make sure that people are aware of that are traveling on the roadways, because that does help also to make sure that people are wanting to follow those rules. Again, thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony, and I'm happy to stand for any questions at the appropriate time.
Committee, questions for Joel? Seeing none, thank you. Next up, we have Phyllis Larimore, Legislative Liaison for Safe Kids Kansas. We'll accept that as written. Next up, committee, we have Captain Bashirs, the Kansas Highway Patrol. I want to apologize to you, committee. We misplaced your testimony, but we will get it back into your packets.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning to the committee. I am Captain Candace Brashears with the Kansas Highway Patrol, and the Kansas Highway Patrol appreciates the opportunity to provide testimony in support of Senate Bill 142, and we respectfully request the committee consider our agency's endorsement. Senate Bill 142 would require the driver of a motor vehicle to move to the lane not adjacent to a stationary vehicle on their side of the roadway, displaying hazard lights, flares, traffic cones, reflective triangles, and other caution signals, or if moving to a lane not adjacent is impossible or unsafe, to slow down when approaching the stationary vehicle displaying the same. Violating the provisions of Senate Bill 142 would result in a $75 fine. Current Kansas law provides that drivers, upon approaching a stationary authorized emergency vehicle using its emergency lights, are required to move into a lane not adjacent to the stationary emergency vehicle, or if moving to a lane not adjacent is impossible or unsafe, to slow down when approaching the stationary emergency vehicle. Authorized emergency vehicles include fire, police, EMS, tow vehicles, and roadway maintenance. Senate Bill 142 would essentially mirror the requirements of drivers approaching emergency vehicles and apply them to any stationary vehicle utilizing their hazard lights or other caution signals. Our troopers can attest to the danger they encounter on a daily basis when working on the side of the road. A matter of feet and sometimes inches can be the difference between conducting a safe traffic stop and being seriously injured or killed after being struck by a passing vehicle. For that reason, we have laws to protect police, firefighters, emergency medical services, tow truck operators, and roadway maintenance crews. We believe the same level of care and attention should be afforded to stop motorists on our roadways. Oftentimes, our citizens in the circumstances described by the bill are not given any choice but to stop on the shoulder of a highway after their tire is blown, their engine overheats, or when they have simply run low on fuel. We can all recall a time when our car has left us stranded and the feeling of semi-trucks whooshing past our window. I can attest to this myself. As working on the side of the roadway, I've been struck by a semi, and I would hate to see that happen to any other, not only emergency vehicles, but citizens in this state. The worry for the safety of our children in the back seat and the dread of not knowing whether the next approaching vehicle may be just the one to cross the fog line and turn a bad day into a deadly day. We believe this law takes a common sense approach to remedying an unsafe situation. We appreciate that the bill takes into account traffic, weather, and road conditions, and whether these movements would be safe to perform. We also believe that making Senate Bill 142 law, we would strengthen our other move-over laws as it aligns our message across the board. If you see flashing lights, move over and slow down. In conclusion, the Kansas Highway Patrol strongly supports Senate Bill 142. We sincerely thank members of this committee for their consideration of our testimony, and we urge their support of this bill. I'll stand for questions.
Committee questions? Committee, you can note that their testimony is in the back of the packet. It was listed under written, so it is in the back of the packet. I'm sorry. Seeing no questions, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Committee note, we also have written testimony from Ed Klump. Are there any neutrals wishing to appear? Any opponents? Seeing none, we'll close the hearing on Senate Bill 142. Once again, committee, tomorrow's meeting has been canceled. There was a minor drafting error in the bill, and they didn't do what the opponent wanted, so they're getting it redrafted. With that, we are adjourned.